During the earthquake, I held back Victor, who was rushing in to save the girl he loved, and ended up breaking my leg. Later, on the day Victor and I got married, the girl jumped off the building because of her disfigurement. He didn't say a word, though. For years, he cared for me, helping me rehabilitate my injured leg. But on our 10th anniversary, he pushed my pregnant self into the road. Before turning to leave, he asked, "Gloria, do you feel the despair now?" As the car ran over me, I finally understood he'd been hiding his hatred all along. When I opened my eyes again, I was back at the moment the building collapsed. This time, I let go of his hand. Chapter 1. Victor. Run. As the load-bearing wall came crashing down, Victor yanked his hand out of mine without hesitation. I froze mid-step as I reached for him, looking at him through the thick dust and debris. In my past life, I had pulled him back, shielding him with my body as the wall came down. The piercing pain when the sharp stones hit me was unbearable. I thought I was going to die. With the last of my strength, I whispered in his ear, "Victor, be happy." Later, I woke up in a hospital, looking at the empty space where half of my right leg had been. I didn't know what to feel, realizing that I would never be able to pursue my beloved fencing career again. I broke down, crying in despair. But Victor's mother came to see me, kneeling and begging me to stop crying, saying they wouldn't get up until I did. The boy who had once been so bright and cheerful stood by my side, hands trembling as he wiped away my tears. "Glo, let's get married. I'll take care of you forever." For a moment, his love felt like it was enough to soothe the bottomless void in my heart. I always thought that the way he looked at me was love, but when the car tires crushed my abdomen, I finally realized it was hatred. No, I need to save Autumn. She hasn't made it out yet. Victor's rough shout snapped me out of my memories. He waved his hands, signaling me to stay away from him. Looking at his still youthful face, I remembered our 10 years together, how he helped me through rehab time and time again, how he held me each time I fell. But I also remembered that on our 10th wedding anniversary, after I had taken off my prosthetic leg, he pushed me into the middle of the road and leaned down to whisper in my ear, "Gloria, do you remember what today is? My Autumn, she's been gone for 10 years. She had agreed to my confession. Everything was supposed to work out. I want you to feel the same helplessness." His voice was laced with a bitterness that stabbed into my heart like a knife. The car wheels rolled over my abdomen, staining the pregnancy test results in my pocket with blood. That had been my anniversary surprise for Victor. "Stay away from me." Victor turned and ran upstairs, glancing back to see if I would try to stop him, thinking I'd still do everything I could to protect him. But this time, I wouldn't. Chapter 2. I was found by the rescue team and taken to safety. Victor and Autumn were nowhere to be found. I didn't know if he had found her, if he'd managed to save the girl he loved. I closed my eyes, hearing Victor's words from my past life echoing in my ears. "Life and death are decided by destiny. Who are you to interfere with my choice? I love Autumn. I'd die for her if I have to. Who are you to stop me?" Our 10 years of childhood friendship meant less to him than a month's acquaintance with Autumn. Once, he'd been ambitious and dedicated, but with just one word from her, he'd skipped an exam and given up all his awards. He said he had never met anyone so perfect for him, but he never wondered if someone so perfectly suited to him could truly exist. The rescue vehicle took us to the hospital for checkups, where I saw Victor's mother, who grabbed my hand with a haggard face. "Where's Victor?" I shook my head. "I don't know. Aren't you two together? How could you leave him behind?" I was momentarily speechless. In my previous life, Mrs. Lin had initially shown me gratitude, but she later used my disability as an excuse to put me down, insisting that her son's acceptance of me was a blessing. She even secretly tried to set him up with other women. When I confronted her, she'd clutch her chest and feign a heart attack, and Victor would shield her, telling me to stay silent. He went in to save someone. I couldn't stop him. Looking at Mrs. Lin, I didn't feel like saying more. Victor had lost his father early, and Mrs. Lin raised him alone, with his graduation just around the corner. If anything happened to him, I didn't know if she could bear it. How could you? How could you just let him go in there? How could you be so cruel? A crowd began to gather around us as Mrs. Lin clutched her chest, sitting on the ground, wailing. My son took care of her for so many years, and she just ran out alone, leaving him behind. A reporter beside her lifted a camera, aiming it at me. Bystanders raised their phones, eager to capture the scene. I could already imagine the video going viral, with countless people who knew nothing of the truth condemning me as ungrateful. But just then, a bloodied stretcher was carried through the doors, and Mrs. Lin, who had been sitting on the floor moments earlier, sprang to her feet and lunged forward. It was Victor, his body covered in blood, his remaining arm wrapped tightly in blood-soaked bandages, his skin marred with deep wounds. Chapter 3. Are you insane? Why did you risk your life like that? What would I do if something happened to you? Victor's mother's desperate cries echoed through the hallway, while Victor merely gave a pale smile. I saved Autumn. As long as she's safe, I'd do anything. The people around exchanged wary glances. Autumn? Isn't that some other girl? Wasn't he with someone else for a long time? Who's Autumn now? Isn't this emotional blackmail? Her son's life matters, but no one else's? Seeing the shift in public opinion, Mrs. Lin fell silent, her face turning deathly pale as she slumped backward. This time, it seemed she wasn't faking. The medical staff hurried over to tend to her and Victor, while I turned away and entered the examination room without another glance. The results came back normal, and as I was leaving the hospital, I heard that Victor had survived, though he'd lost an arm and would need an amputation. In this life, our fates had switched. He became the one injured, and he was the one who had saved the person he loved. I hoped Autumn would stay by his side for the journey ahead. I stood outside the ICU, watching the flickering red light. Memories of Autumn's face in my past life surfaced in my mind, when the walls were collapsing, and everyone was running for their lives. She had clutched her phone and spoke with determination. Say you love me, or I'll die right here. I won't leave. Hudson, if you don't give me an answer, I won't live. I'd seen her on Again, Off Again romance with a senior from the directing department. I'd heard her laughing with friends, saying, Victor? I'm just playing around with him. If I don't act seriously, how will Hudson ever feel heartbroken? That was why I tried to hold Victor back, to free him from a fate he didn't deserve. Even if he harbored feelings for someone else, even if he'd shoved me aside so ruthlessly, I valued our years of friendship, and for the sake of a clear conscience, I wanted to pull him out of the mire. But if he was determined to jump in, then, as he said, it was fate. Life and death are determined by destiny. Chapter 4. I saw Victor again a month later. His once proud right arm, which he used for basketball, was now amputated, with only a short stump wrapped in bandages, making even the simplest movements difficult. Mrs. Lin seemed to have aged 10 years, her voice worn and hoarse. She could hardly speak anymore. I brought a bouquet of flowers when I went to see him, calmly telling him that we should part ways. Victor didn't try to stop me, perhaps because during his recovery, Autumn had visited him many times, tearfully professing her love and promising to stay with him forever. I suppose, for both of us, this was a fitting conclusion. After he left, I lingered in his empty hospital room, lost in thought. It was the same room I'd once occupied in my past life, back when I'd thought Victor could save me. Only now did I understand that the only person who could save me was myself. As I glanced outside, expecting to see Victor and Autumn lost in each other's company, I instead saw her locked in a passionate kiss with Hudson, his arms around her. My phone's ringtone abruptly cut through the moment. Glancing at the screen, I saw it was my mother. I answered, but my gaze stayed fixed on the scene below. By the time I looked again, Victor had already walked downstairs. Hudson had vanished, and Autumn, holding a bouquet of vibrant roses, leapt into Victor's arms with a radiant smile. Hello, Mom. My eyes remained on the scene below as I spoke. Victor, unaware of everything that had just transpired, tried to embrace Autumn, but his missing arm made it difficult. His attempt ultimately failed. Glow, where have you been? My mother's voice sounded anxious. In my past life, she had been devastated when I lost my leg, though she'd never blamed Victor. A few times after we got married, she quietly expressed her concerns, saying that she didn't know if Victor was the right choice. But Victor had always seemed so respectful in front of her and so gentle with me that I argued with her, insisting she was just overthinking. In this new life, I realized that her worries were rooted in intuition, a sense that came from love. If I'd listened to her sooner, perhaps things would have turned out differently. Don't worry, Mom. I've already said goodbye to Victor. My tone softened, but in that moment, my whole body tensed as I noticed something in the corner of my eye. Hudson stood in the garden, hands in his pockets, looking up at me with a faint, mocking smile. He raised a finger to his lips, making a should gesture, a silent warning for me to stay quiet. Chapter 5. Someone like Autumn, with her endless charm, attracting suitors was no surprise. Even in the theater department, filled with beautiful people, she stood out, her deep, narrow eyes seemingly filled with stars, exuding an almost hypnotic allure when she looked at someone. Rumor had it that several well-known directors had already reached out to her with roles, but she turned them all down, saying she wanted to save her debut for Hudson. But fate had other plans in my past life. In the earthquake, her once prized face was scarred, her beauty destroyed. Back then, Victor had left me during my post-surgery recovery to visit her secretly, only to be turned away every time. He believed she refused to see him because of her disfigurement, and thought she took her life out of despair after he married me. He never knew that on the day Autumn jumped, Hudson posted a photo on social media, his fingers intertwined with another girl's, radiating happiness. All my struggles over the last 10 years couldn't erase the flaws that Victor saw in her, a woman he thought of as perfect. He attributed all her suffering to me, not realizing that she'd never truly cared about him. Back then, I was heartbroken. Now I realize my devotion to Victor was no different than his unyielding love for Autumn. Chapter 6. Returning to campus. I saw the school had mostly been rebuilt. With graduation approaching, everyone was busy sending out resumes. In my past life, Victor had stood out with his impressive skills, drawing the attention of recruiters. But now, he could only sit at booths of small, overlooked companies, clumsily writing his name with his left hand. Most of the recruiters didn't say anything, but their sympathetic looks spoke volumes. He was now experiencing the same hopelessness I'd once endured. Gloria, can I ask about your views on balancing career and family? The interviewer looked at my resume with interest. I understood that, as a single young woman, I'd face these questions in the job market. I paused, lost in memories, then replied firmly, I was born to be a mountain, not a stream. The interviewer seemed momentarily surprised but soon smiled warmly and nodded. All right, Gloria, one last question. You're applying for a position as a wheelchair fencing coach. Is there a particular reason for this choice? My hand brushed my right knee under the table, my ankle turning slightly as the joy of regaining what I'd once lost filled my heart. In my past life, I'd loathed fencing, even smashing my television in fits of rage when watching my favorite matches. Eventually, I learned about wheelchair fencing, and a female coach placed a sword in my hand, telling me, if you lose your legs, then grow wings, you can still fly. But by then, my body had weakened too much to fulfill that dream. Now that I had a second chance, I wanted others to experience the same joy in life. Faster, higher, stronger, these are ideals of willpower to me. Physical limitations should never restrict someone from pursuing their dreams. Those were the words my coach had shared, and they'd become my comfort in the second chance. Chapter 7. As the crowd dispersed, I saw Victor and Autumn. She clung to his side, drawing attention, her voice soft and sweet. Victor, don't worry. It's okay if you don't have a job. I'll take care of you forever. Hearing those familiar words, I couldn't help but smile slightly. Let me introduce you to someone for a job, one that isn't too tiring and pays well. I don't need you to set me up. There's no way no one will hire me. Autumn, just give me a little time. Trust me. Autumn didn't truly care for Victor. Her kindness was likely just to avoid judgment or criticism from others. But Victor, once so full of pride, could hardly bear to accept charity from anyone, least of all from a girl. Even now, he believed he still had a chance to make something of himself. Yet his record showed a glaring mark from the exam he skipped to attend one of Autumn's competitions. Recovery would be a long road. and Victor had lost the high starting point he once had. To reach his former heights, he'd need to work hundreds of times harder. I walked past them without looking, though as I passed, I heard Victor raise his voice deliberately. Autumn, I'll make you happy. I glimpsed out of the corner of my eye as he wrapped his arm around her waist, casting a sideways glance in my direction. I pretended not to hear and kept walking, though in my mind, I saw an 18-year-old boy standing outside my house, waiting all night with a jar of stars, hesitating as he said, Gloria, I got into the same university as you. Could we be together? I promise I'll make you happy. I closed my eyes, recalling the swaying willow trees and the boy's sweat-soaked white shirt. We'd tried so hard to be together, only to be defeated by time. Chapter 8. Glow. A sweet voice broke through my thoughts as Luna bounded over from afar, jumping into my arms. For the graduation ceremony, will you act for me? I'd met Luna through our theater club, from a wealthy family. She was about to study abroad after graduation. Her biggest worry right now was her final school project, a short film she needed to complete. I linked my arm through hers and nodded. She seemed concerned I'd be upset after the breakup, so she subtly positioned herself to block my view of Victor and Autumn. Victor's mom came to school a few days ago and made a scene with Autumn. She said Autumn would belong to the Lin family for life and demanded she give her a grandson as soon as possible. Anyone would be stressed out with a mother-in-law like that. Luna watched my expression closely, as if worried I'd be hurt. Luna, I've broken up with Victor. I don't want to hear anything more about him. I was at a pivotal point in my life, with many things more important than love. I didn't want someone I'd cut ties with affecting me. This was a punishment I owed myself. Chapter 9. Luna's film was based on a mountain village teacher, and I played a girl pressured by her family to abandon her education and marry. During rehearsals, I noticed that we were practicing next to Hudson, and Autumn was cast as the lead in his project. The two spent a lot of time together, their relationship rumored around campus. Given Hudson's family background, no one dared say much about it. Victor initially had promising responses from companies, but, mysteriously, they all fell silent. He ultimately took Autumn's advice and joined a company she had connections with, one that paid fairly well. This, however, meant he would now rely on others, becoming the very kind of person he once despised. By this point in my past life, Victor had been going through rehabilitation, the most grueling stage of adapting to his new reality and facing his limitations. His mood became erratic, and he leaned on Autumn to fill the void. But Autumn's focus was elsewhere. She was determined to look her best on camera, keeping a strict routine of early nights and healthy habits. Immersed in the glow of attention, she became even more radiant. During rehearsal breaks, I often overheard her on the phone, sounding annoyed. I told you I'm busy. We have a crew meeting tonight. I can't go with you. Sometimes, when Victor came looking for her, she'd make an excuse to leave, instructing her friends, "Don't tell him I'm here." On Valentine's Day, Victor showed up with flowers, only for Autumn to brush him off, claiming she was too busy. In front of everyone, Victor finally snapped. He threw the bouquet to the ground, his voice trembling with anger. "Autumn, I've called you countless times. What are you trying to do?" Everyone froze, but Autumn wasn't fazed. Confident in her beauty, she retorted, "Victor, I'm busy. Unlike you, some of us have real responsibilities." She emphasized real responsibilities, clearly striking a nerve. Victor stood there, speechless with rage. "Autumn, don't you have a heart? I did all this for you. Don't you feel any shame? I didn't ask you to save me. It was your choice. For all you know, I might have been fine without you. Do you expect me to repay you for life? And don't forget, I got you that job. I don't owe you anything." Victor, visibly shaken, tried to point at her, but his sleeve hung empty, and he nearly stumbled over a chair in front of him. From afar, I watched Victor, the once promising young man, standing humiliated and helpless, enduring silent scorn and deceit. I lowered my gaze in sympathy. Sometimes, it takes loss to appreciate what one had, a truth Autumn might never grasp, since she would never know what might have happened to her without Victor's help, and Victor would never understand that if I hadn't pulled him back, he might not have faced this fate. That's why he never thanked me, just as Autumn would never thank him. Chapter 10. Our rehearsal schedule was disrupted that day, so after everyone left, I stayed behind to practice. In the film, my character was an actress breaking out from the countryside, showcasing fencing at the end, coming back to life. My moves had become rusty, so I repeated each one tirelessly. When the lights on stage went out, I was still practicing, thrusting forward in the dim light, only to suddenly spot a shadowy figure seated in the darkness. "Who's there?" Startled, I nearly dropped my sword. "You're impressive." It was Hudson. He raised his brow, his dark eyes almost haunting. "Victor doesn't deserve you." Thinking he was here to threaten me into silence, I preemptively brought it up. "Don't worry. I won't talk about you and Autumn." He chuckled softly, his gaze relaxing as he drew closer, a faint hint of intoxication in his eyes. "Autumn isn't right. I want someone like you, a resilient leading lady, strong as wild grass." I smelled a mix of alcohol and cologne as I stepped back. Frowning, Hudson, confident in his family's status and his supposed artistic persona, was notorious for his flirtations. Most girls tolerated his advances, each with their own motives, but I shot him a cold glance, stepping further back. "My life is my own business, and it has nothing to do with you." I turned to leave, but Hudson grabbed my sleeve. "Gloria, has anyone told you? You're different. If we were together, imagine how heartbroken Victor would be. Wouldn't you like to see him come crawling back?" For a brief moment, I felt a flicker of temptation, but I quickly suppressed it. I didn't need a man's pursuit to validate my worth, nor his regret to prove I was enough. My worth didn't rely on any man or woman to complete it. I don't want anything to do with Victor anymore. If you keep bothering me, I'll expose everything I know, and it won't look good for you. I cast off my costume and strode out of the theater. Chapter 11. After that day, Victor and Autumn began a cold war. He stopped visiting her at the theater and no longer appeared with her on campus, thinking he was punishing her, but he had no idea this was exactly what she wanted. On my birthday, Luna organized a celebration with the entire cast at a restaurant. While we were there, I received a nameless text message. "Happy birthday, Leah." The nickname made me think of Victor. He'd called me that in the first love letter he'd written to me when we were 17. But without hesitation, I pressed delete. As I left the restaurant, a crowd of friends surrounded me, walking me back to campus. I was a bit drunk, and a boy beside me offered to steady me a few times, only to hesitate and withdraw each time. I noticed but said nothing. Under the street lamp, I saw a tall, thin figure standing alone. The boy beside me noticed first, silently drifting further away. "Leah." Victor's voice was strained, revealing traces of emotion he tried to suppress. "Happy birthday." Our exchange was brief, and I nodded. "Thank you." He held out an ugly handful of paper stars. I didn't fold them very well. He stepped forward, but I took a step back. The wind blew, scattering the stars across the ground. Neither of us stooped to pick them up. "I'm going to Beijing to get a prosthetic." His voice carried a hint of hurt. During our 4 years together, I'd been there for every major moment in his life, staying by his side through all his hardships. In our second year, he'd fallen off his bike, injuring his arm and staining his shirt with blood. Yet he'd still held out the birthday cake he'd made for me. But when I rolled up his sleeve, the boy who stood a head taller than me had burst into tears, pouting like a child. For all his arrogance, he'd shown a soft vulnerability with me. But now, in his toughest moment, I wouldn't be there anymore. "I wish you well." My face was expressionless as I spoke coldly. "Leah, why are you so heartless? Can't we even be friends?" People nearby glanced over with questioning eyes, and I looked him in the eye. "Victor, don't call me that. You don't deserve to. You think you're still in love with me, but all you're feeling is a need for comfort because you've been rejected. You should know that I can't tolerate even a hint of betrayal. When you pushed me away, you should have realized we could never be friends again. Don't think you can use your so-called deep affection to manipulate me. Life and death are fate. Wealth and fortune are destiny. You chose your path. Bear the consequences yourself." I gave him a light smile and turned to rejoin my friends, walking away without looking back. Chapter 12. The days leading to graduation flew by. In the routine of rehearsals, a month slipped past before I noticed. Hudson began gifting me expensive items. A designer ring slipped into my bag, or an exclusive, hard-to-get dress. I knew it wasn't love at first sight. It was just Hudson's pastime, a game to amuse himself. I paid no attention to him because I'd already accepted a coaching offer from the provincial fencing team. I was preparing the newly formed team for an important competition 3 months away. On Autumn's birthday, Victor suddenly returned. He came with his mother, sporting his new prosthetic arm. They'd chosen that day to surprise Autumn and break the ice. Lynn's mother told me all this herself. After everything she'd gone through, she seemed worn out. Her attitude toward me much warmer. Glow. Victor's still such a child, always needing someone to worry about him. You've known him for so long. You know how impulsive he can be. He acts rashly, but he's sentimental. In my past life, after we married, she'd said the same thing to other women, implying I should put up with him. Hearing it now made me feel nothing but disgust. No one stays a child forever. He's a grown man and should take responsibility for his actions. Whether he's sentimental or not has nothing to do with me. He has a girlfriend now, you should tell her. I tried to walk away, but she grabbed my arm. I'm saying this because I like you, Glow. Otherwise, you know that he's getting along well with that girl, and he's already found a job. Let's be honest, if Victor hadn't lost an arm, he wouldn't be considering you. Her tone was proud as she talked about her son, as if he hadn't told her about the job he'd gotten through connections or the fights with Autumn. Lynn's mother didn't genuinely like me. She simply felt Autumn wasn't proper enough. She wanted me to take over the mess. In my last life, I'd seen how difficult she could be. Now, I wondered what kind of sparks would fly between her and a girl like Autumn. Well, then, I wish them all the best. May they have a long, happy life together. There's no need to match me with him. I'm not worthy of your precious son. Lynn's mother huffed, grabbing her bag to leave. But as her hand passed in front of me, I noticed her fingertips were clubbed, a sign of serious heart issues. It seemed her heart condition had worsened, and I held my tongue, fearing my words might aggravate her. Mom, let's go. Autumn's waiting. As she opened the door, Victor's voice came from the hall. Laughter followed as a group of people moved toward them. I closed the door, crouching to quietly organize my props. Luna told me that Victor had booked a large restaurant and that most of the 2 casts had gone to the celebration. Naturally, I didn't attend and left after tidying up. Every day now, I trained with the provincial team, leaving me no time for such news. However, as I reached the school gate, I saw an ambulance rushing in, followed by clusters of students hurrying toward the theater building. Hurry! A senior in the performing arts department was caught cheating by her boyfriend. Chapter 13. Luna filled me in on the rest. She said that a crowd had gathered around Victor and his mother, who excitedly opened the dressing room door, only to find Autumn and Hudson in a compromising position. Quoting poetically, she told me, the two were so lost in each other they were oblivious to the world. Victor was frozen in place, speechless. Mrs. Lynn turned pale, lunging at Autumn, grabbing her hair to hit her. But Autumn kicked her in the chest, knocking her to the ground. Victor tried to intervene, but he ended up in a fight with Hudson. The entire scene was recorded by someone who'd been filming for a surprise video. I waved my hand, not wanting to hear more, but Luna continued. That's not all. In the commotion, someone accidentally pushed Autumn. She fell, and there was a pool of blood. I was stunned, choking on a sip of water. Apparently, Autumn was 3 months pregnant. She lost the baby. No one knows what's going to happen next. By my calculations, Victor and Autumn hadn't even been together for 3 months. I wondered how Victor felt upon learning the news. And Victor's mom was hospitalized, nearly having a heart attack. She's in the ICU now. Glow. You're so lucky you broke up with Victor. Don't get involved in their mess. You're lucky. When Victor was with you, he thrived, but he didn't appreciate it. Now he's facing the consequences. Luna's words were harsh, but I knew she was completely on my side. Enough. Luna, let's not mention Victor anymore. He's just someone I've known for a long time. Let me show you one of the girls on our team. Look at how beautifully she performs her moves. I pulled out my phone, showing her a video of a young girl who'd lost her legs to polio. With her sword raised, she executed a flawless throat strike. Before joining us, she had nearly given in to her parents' demands to marry a stranger with hearing loss. But fencing had given her the courage to stand up for herself. Glow, you're amazing. Luna's eyes misted as she hugged me tightly. When I become a director, I'll make your story into a movie. Chapter 14. The graduation assessment arrived as scheduled. Luna's short film was a success. At the end, a group of girls clasped hands tightly, reciting in unison, "I am the mountain," in their voices. I donned my fencing attire and demonstrated my swordsmanship on stage. I wished to gaze down from the peak at the mediocrity below. As my clothes swirled around me, a vision of a speeding car flashed in my mind, along with a helpless woman in a wheelchair, eyes brimming with tears and despair as she whispered, "Help me, someone, please help me." Across the unreachable distance of time, I answered her, "I will save you. I can save you." The noisy traffic stilled, her swollen belly smoothed, and I grew strong legs once again, standing up and pulling myself to safety amidst the smoke and debris. In this reborn life, I would love myself fully. From the audience below, thunderous applause erupted. I spotted Victor in the crowd, crying uncontrollably, but the first person to stand and present flowers was, unexpectedly, Hudson. He held a bouquet so large it nearly covered him as he walked toward me. "Gloria, you look stunning today." In the center of the bouquet was a bold message. "Gloria, I like you, but I didn't accept it." In the end, Luna, as the organizer, took the bouquet for me and responded courteously, "Thank you for your support." As I packed my things backstage, I noticed a figure standing at the door, looking straight at me. I turned. It was Victor. He walked over, struggling as he extended his arms. "Glow, we're graduating. Can I have a hug?" We both knew this was the last time we would ever see each other. I glanced at his mechanical arm visible beneath his sleeve and, finally, softened a bit. "Lia, be happy." His voice choked up. In this new life, the words I once said to him were now being spoken back to me. Fate's strange twists held a certain irony. If back then, when I rushed in, you had just pulled me back, how different things might have been. I would have understood my mistakes. "Gloria, I'm sorry. I was wrong." Victor's lips trembled. His head lowered as his tears fell silently to the ground. I smiled. "Victor, refusing to admit your mistakes makes you a coward. If you hadn't regretted it, I might still have some respect for you. You don't need my forgiveness because I don't matter to you. And you don't matter to me either." Never seeing each other again is a blessing for us both. With my belongings packed, I left the theater. This time, my dark past was finally over. Chapter 15. After leaving school, I rarely paid attention to those people's news. Even when Luna told me later about Lynn's mother's surgery nearly ending in blood loss, Autumn's family storming the Lynn household, and Victor losing his job and scrambling to borrow money for the medical bills, I remained indifferent. Only Hudson persisted, sending me messages repeatedly. He bombarded me with greetings, mentioning he'd broken up with Autumn and asking if I'd like to be the lead actress in his next film. I never responded. Men who relied on money and power to coerce others didn't strike me as the charismatic leader type but rather as repulsive. I was busy training my team for a competition, exhausted each day. With 10 days left before the match, I took my team to the competition venue to adapt to the environment. As adaptive sports often require more preparation time, I was on edge, worried that any mishap might ruin our hard work. But the night we arrived at the hotel, I received an urgent call from Luna. "Glow, did you check the trending news?" Before I could respond, she hung up and sent me a video. It showed the day of the earthquake, with Lynn's mother screaming at me in the hospital. The clip had been edited to only show her accusing me of abandoning Victor. The video focused on my indifferent expression, now turned into a viral meme with the caption, "I don't care if he lives or dies." My identity was soon exposed, along with the entire team I was coaching. Comments from uninformed netizens poured in with vitriol. If she couldn't even save someone close to her, how can she care about disabled people? Isn't this on purpose? She's a coach for the Paralympics, so more disabled people should make her happy, right? Disqualify her team from the competition. What kind of heartless coach does this team even deserve to compete? The criticism extended from me to my team and then to the members themselves. Did you offend someone, Glow? How could this video show up so coincidentally now? It's obvious someone's targeting you. Luna's words helped clear my mind. I immediately searched for the original video on a social media site. Under the post, I noticed a familiar avatar. I recognized it because, in my past life, Hudson had used the same avatar when he posted that infamous message that shattered Autumn. It's Hudson. Saying it aloud sent a chill down my spine. Hudson's family was prominent, and this disgusting tactic to control public opinion was clearly a move to exert pressure. As I tried to process everything, an unknown number flashed on my screen. Gloria, have you seen the trending news? Even with the voice distortion, I recognized Hudson's voice. What do you want? Step down as coach and join my film project. Otherwise, your reputation won't be the only thing affected. I can ensure your entire team is barred from competing. Chapter 16. Sitting alone in the dark. I felt the silence stretch. Hudson had always been unhinged. If I didn't agree, who knew how far he'd take this? I didn't want my personal conflicts to ruin the months of hard work my team had put into this. But my own dreams mattered to me, too. This was a project I'd long anticipated. One I felt fully capable of leading. I didn't want to give it up easily. Glow, have you thought about where the video came from? Luna's question stirred my thoughts. That day, I tried to remember. My memory of that chaotic time was hazy, but aside from Victor and his mother, I didn't recall anyone else close to me being present. It had been so long, who else could have dug it up to use against me? After a moment of consideration, I called Victor. Leah. He answered first, sounding frantic. I didn't leak the video. His haste to deny it only made me more suspicious. It was your mother, wasn't it? The answer dawned on me the moment I asked. My heart sank. After a long silence, he finally spoke. Leah, I'm sorry. She's been through so much. I can't hold her accountable for this. I'll take responsibility for whatever comes next. I'll explain everything. Make the truth clear, okay? I laughed coldly. How could he explain? What identity could he even use to justify his words? By the time he cleared up the truth, irreversible damage would already be done. The full video, do you have it? Only the complete footage, with Victor's explanation, could end the controversy quickly and definitively. The video. Hudson bought it. He covered all our surgery costs, so he's the only one who has the right to release it now. The voice I once adored now felt so shallow, so cold. My phone slipped from my hand, falling to the floor. The provincial team had urgently contacted my superiors, and the head coach called me, surprisingly gentle. Glow, don't worry, we're working on a solution. In my mind, I saw the day of the interview when I'd said to her, physical limitations should never restrict someone's pursuit of their dreams. My team members had already faced so many hardships. For many, this competition was their one chance. Without a win to advance to nationals, many would return home to face unwanted futures. This wasn't just my dream. It was theirs, too. Could I really let Hudson destroy it all? Put the blame on me. I'll resign as coach, and let the team compete as planned. After the competition, we can figure out what to do. I knew, however, that this would leave a stain on my career, a mark nearly impossible to erase. But my team had already given everything. I couldn't let myself be the one to hinder them now. Quickly packing my things, I dialed Luna's number. Luna, where are you? I need to. But before I could finish, Luna screamed on the other end. Glow, there's been a twist. Check the trending news. Chapter 17. News of the full video release quickly topped the local trending chart. The video showed Victor's tearful explanation and the accusations from onlookers, causing public opinion to shift. Attention soon turned to the mysterious connection between Victor and Autumn. But within half an hour, the trending topic disappeared without a trace, seamlessly replaced by trivial entertainment news. It was clear someone was pulling strings behind the scenes. I thought about how, if Autumn's true identity were revealed, Hudson would be easy to trace. Likely, he didn't want the situation to escalate further. Still, I didn't know who could have managed to bypass Hudson's control to release the video. After this incident, Hudson never contacted me again. With the competition approaching, everything felt like a minor hiccup along the way. The following days unfolded smoothly, and my team performed beyond expectations, securing the top 3 spots in the provincial competition. Under the bright lights, the girls beamed, embracing each other as they pushed their wheelchairs in celebration, accompanied by the song Sea of Stars. Thanks to the pre-competition buzz, the event drew extra attention. One girl from the mountains who won first place was quickly approached by an advertising company, which offered to cover all her future training expenses. Amid the cheering crowd, I received an unexpected call. When I picked up, a familiar voice echoed through the line, "Gloria, you're amazing." Hearing that distant yet familiar voice brought memories rushing back, and my eyes welled up. Chapter 18. In a dark hospital room, a TV on the wall played live news. At the time, I struggled with severe insomnia, unable to sleep night after night, spiraling into despair. One evening, I heard a female reporter's voice on a broadcast. Her steady, gentle tone gave me a rare sense of calm, and for the first time in a while, I felt a little drowsy. In those dark days, I became accustomed to letting her voice lull me to sleep. Then one day, the news reported her tragic story. A journalist who had covered the earthquake aftermath had fallen from the 17th floor of a hospital, her death attributed to despair after witnessing the devastation. Clips from her interviews replayed, her voice always exuding strength and hope. I never knew what drove her to her end, but the whole situation struck me as oddly tragic. Now, hearing her voice again, I couldn't help but tear up. We met in a small cafe. "Did you release the full video?" The woman before me, Julia, had a warm, round face, and I realized she was the one who'd filmed the scene with Lynn's mother years ago. I felt relieved that, in this life, such a tragedy hadn't happened to her. Yes, it was me. Her voice was just as comforting, like a gentle stream flowing through my heart. Why help me? Given the power Hudson wielded, any evidence would likely be safeguarded to ensure his control. A journalist might even be eager to trade it for Hudson's connections and resources. Because my daughter was paralyzed, her gaze softened as she shared her story. That day, we were supposed to go to the park together, but I got called away on an assignment and left her with my husband. Later, she was pinned by a falling column, and her legs were crushed. "And your husband?" She gave a slight, bitter smile. "He was with someone else in a hotel nearby." I only found out later. Memories of her tragic end in the previous life flitted across my mind, and I guessed that hospital must have been where her daughter was treated. My daughter loved dancing. Her teacher said she had great potential and even suggested we enroll her in a top school. Her voice faltered. "She's so young." She couldn't bear it. She resisted treatment and was in poor spirits until Julia looked up at me. "When I attended your school's job fair during the reconstruction, I heard your speech." I repeated your words to her and showed her videos of wheelchair fencing. She cried that night but told me the next morning, "Mom, I can dance, even in a wheelchair." Along with that, she handed me a suicide note she'd already written. Startled, I looked at her in shock. If it weren't for you, she might not be alive. And if she were gone, I don't know where I would have found the strength to keep going. I felt a jolt in my heart, realizing that unknowingly, I'd changed so much more than I'd ever imagined. Hudson reached out to me with an outrageous offer for that video, but I told him the camera malfunctioned that day. Julia's daughter was undergoing extensive treatment, and she was battling her ex-husband in court. Despite her struggles, she never mentioned needing the money. I understood her hardships well. If it weren't for you, I don't know what would have become of me. 1,000 bells cannot persuade me to abandon my principles. So what good is that wealth to me? Her voice was just as resolute as ever. I used to blame myself, thinking I wasn't good enough to keep my husband, that it was my fault my daughter suffered. But you reminded me, we are mountains, not streams. Why should we let small setbacks hold us back? I should make him pay. If your story needs a twist with a savior, I hope she's a woman. We're not fools who fight over men until we're bruised and battered. Our swords can point at the real cowards. With those parting words, she left. Chapter 19. When the scandal broke, I was attending my fencing team's victory banquet. This time, Hudson took the spotlight. The news exposed the scandal from Autumn's birthday. The video captured Autumn and Hudson in disarray, followed by Victor's shocked expression as he stood with a bouquet in hand. The complex entanglement among the three became the center of intense scrutiny, igniting a media frenzy. I didn't know how Julia got the video from Hudson's friend, but I knew that betrayal invites betrayal, and those drawn together by convenience ultimately part ways. It's karma's cycle. Autumn's budding acting career hit a wall. Viewers compared her current looks to the girl in the video, taking a while to confirm it was indeed her. Only when I saw recent photos did I realize that the stunning beauty she once was no longer existed. With no way to turn things around, Autumn's manager exposed everything, revealing that after a breakup, she'd obsessively pursued multiple cosmetic surgeries. By her early 20s, her once flawless face was unrecognizably stiff. Without her beauty, she became expendable, a scapegoat for public scorn. Even her once private words, "Victor? I'm just playing around with him. If I don't act serious, Hudson won't get jealous," resurfaced. I didn't know if Victor followed entertainment news or what he felt hearing that recording. Hudson's investors were soon revealed to be involved in tax evasion. The once righteous mogul with countless affairs was finally exposed by his ex-wife, facing legal consequences. We'll keep you updated as the story unfolds. This is Julia, reporting. Hearing her voice at the end of the report, I sensed a hint of lightness, a feeling of release. Chapter 20. Years passed before I saw Luna again. After studying abroad, she avoided family pressure to marry by dedicating herself to filmmaking, and she unexpectedly became a renowned director. She told me that the movie based on my life was finally in production. Her year in the directing program had produced many talents, yet the most famous among them, Hudson, had fallen into obscurity. Luna asked if I wanted to preserve any particular lines, so I wrote one down for her. Years ago, someone told me, life and death are fate, wealth is destiny. But I want you to know, as long as you refuse to give up, you can say, I control my fate. It doesn't control me. I told Luna I wanted my first student to be the inspiration. The once scrawny girl had since become a Paralympic champion. Each year, she sent me a photo from her competitions, her once awkward smile now bold and dazzling. She possessed a beauty equal to Autumn's, a beauty that radiated vitality. Luna invited many of my former students to join the film, girls who once saw me as their savior, who believed I'd helped them find the courage to live. But no one knew that. At first, all I wanted was to save myself. In the quiet of the night, I still hear that woman in the wheelchair saying, I am thousands upon thousands. In striving to save and love oneself, a person releases courage even they didn't know they had. And that courage, the true value of being the main character, is what the world needs. I'm grateful that this time, I became the hero of my own story.